Okay, I think we are live. Um, Notice just a ground message just popped up on my screen. Multiple tornadoes somewhere. Yeah, we got lots of problems. However, today I'm talking about something that I was watching some newscaster talking, and they were actually talking about severe weather here in the U.S. And we've had a lot of severe weather resulting in floods. And I think someone mentioned, kind of in passing, yeah, this is going to really damage crops and interfere with the harvest, which made me think again about something that's been on my mind for a couple of years now. So this channel, I talk generally exclusively about global heating. And when other people talk about global heating, they're generally, well, they don't talk about global heating. I think calling it global heating focuses the mind. And I think that we really have to do that because there's so much confusion out there about what we are in for and what is happening to us. So I call it global heating because I think that's the key. That's the physics. Other people call it climate change, which is a little more nebulous. What does that mean? Does it get hotter? Does it get colder? Does it get drier? Does it get wetter? Will it be nice? Maybe my climate will change and it'll be better. So that was chosen by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce as our discussion point because it is nebulous. And so people don't know what to think or do. Global heating is not nebulous. It's physics. Heat. Energy. Too much of it. It's too hot. And there you go. That focuses the mind, focuses the discussion. And if you get to somebody who's going to talk about global heating, they might talk about heat waves. We're definitely having those. In Europe, Spain, India had them, China has had them, and the U.S., of course, is having them as well. Global heating can also increase evaporation, so you can have droughts. Global heating can increase precipitation, the exact opposite, so you can have floods. Oh, and you can have droughts and then floods like back-to-back years. And then you can have fires, and the fires burn the hillside, and the fires can be caused by global heating. Yeah, that's a thing. And then when the fire is gone and the rains come, you get flash floods like we just saw in Texas, and also 3 days after the Texas debacle in Kerr County, flash floods in New Mexico, right next door, the next state over. So all these things are happening, and it's easy to focus on the extreme weather because it's dramatic, right? And we've all got that monkey thing going on. We want to look at this scary thing, and it's entertaining. And if, some people are entertained by it. Some people find it annoying and don't watch it, and they go watch the Kardashians. So everyone has their choice of how they want to be entertained. But the thing is that it's really not about severe weather. The severe weather will eventually have consequences. The severe weather can come and go. The hail comes and then it goes. The flood, even a terrible flood like what happened in Texas, eventually the water flows away and you can rebuild, start over, whatever you're going to do. But after the severe weather is gone, you have the ongoing impacts. Once again, the media will almost always focus exclusively. The only thing they will focus on is the human misery and suffering. Okay, fine. But that's their problem. So this is going to sound a little bit callous, but I just want people to focus on the real problem. The fact that people get washed away and their homes get destroyed and their businesses and maybe their entire communities. That's their problem. It's dramatic, it's heartbreaking, it's all these things. That's their problem. You also have a problem. Most of these places, if they're in the U.S. and if they're east of the Rockies, are growing food. There you go. They're growing food. So those crops are not going to come in. Those people won't be in a position to harvest the crops. If there's a planting season coming up, those people who just got flooded out or rained out or swept away or killed will be in no position to plant crops. or do the maintenance on their tractors, and their tractors may be destroyed, and their barns and their silos and their chicken, factories and their beef processing facilities, and all these things get caught up. So while it's very dramatic to watch these things happen and have an emotional reaction, and your heart goes pound to pound, and you have an adrenaline rush, and you come away feeling blessed that it didn't happen to you, something is going to happen to you. You're going to run out of food. So this is scaremongering. No, it isn't. You're going to run out of food. You should care about that. So my wife, we are gardening in our backyard and actually in the front yard. We encourage other people to garden all the time. She shops at the farmer's market. Now, that's mostly small scale farmers. They're not people gardening in their backyard. But there are people at the farmer's market that are small scale honey producers, or that start plants and have them in pots and they sell them at the farmer's market. So there are, small scale producers as well as these medium scale producers who are local, who sell their wares at the farmer's market. And we should be supporting that. You should be supporting that. Even if it costs more and even if it's not as convenient, you should support that, because that's your local food supply. Because here's what's happening to your food supply. It's going to be a short video because I got other things to do. And you either get this or you don't. You either get it the first time through or you don't get it. And that's not my problem. Here's what's happening to your food supply. A lot of your food, let's start with something like wheat. Wheat can be used to make flour. And flour in turn is used to make most of the things we eat. We eat a lot of bready things and pastries and stuff like that. Your wheat comes from very specific places that can grow wheat. And here in the U.S., it's generally in the Midwest. And there are places in Eastern Europe like Ukraine and Russia that grow wheat. Used to, sometimes, are successful. China grows wheat. All the places I just mentioned are subject to the ravages of extreme weather. And if your wheat crop becomes destroyed, then you're done for the year. The same thing with your rice crop. The same thing with your soybean crop and your corn and your barley and a lot of the other things. Also, a good part of this food, maybe it makes it to your plate, but it's still food. It's agricultural production. A good part of it goes to feeding animals, which also may make their way to your plate. So all these huge chicken ranches, I mean, they cover a couple of square miles, some of them, and these enormous dairy farms and hundreds of cattle and these enormous beef production facilities. They're all fed from farm produce. Almost none of the beef, well, it could, but almost none of the beef is allowed to free range graze on pasture. Same thing with the dairy. There is a movement called the free range movement, of course, for all of these animals. And again, these are small producers who have more expensive products. They're more artisanal or boutique. And you can get their stuff, local production, grass-fed, pasture-fed, but they're really tiny. Most of your food, and of course the products made from food, like pastries and cereals and granola and whatnot, are not coming from these artisanal, small production-run farms. They're coming from the bigger ones because that's what makes the cheapest. The cheapest oats come from huge oat collectives that have hundreds of acres in cultivation and harvest it with enormous tractors. And then it goes into the Quaker oats and the granolas and all the other things that contain oats. These are all quite vulnerable to extreme weather. And there are several forms that the severe weather can take. Tornadoes, hurricanes, any kind of high wind derechos can just knock crops flat, just knock them flat. Storms, hail. Hail's a big problem. Hail can just beat a field to pulp. Hail of any size at all can do that and render it basically lost, completely lost. Floods are bad. Floods, depending on the time of year, can interfere with planting, can interfere with the growth of the plants if they're already in the ground. The silt can basically strangle them or interfere with harvest. Oh, it can also interfere with other forms of production, like you've harvested the grain and now it's in a silo. Oh, but that area where the silos are just flooded. So that grain is now ruined in the silo. And maybe it was being stored in the silo, waiting for a chance to sell it into the market. Well, now they can't do that. It's been destroyed. So there's lots of places in the system where, especially the large production systems that are dependent on lots of inputs, for example, storing the grain in a silo until you can find a market for it. That's big production. There are lots of places and moments in the production cycle where food is stored or processed or shipped, where it can be vulnerable to extreme weather. Extreme weather also causes conflict. And I just mentioned Ukraine and Russia. They have their own particular set of problems. But there are other parts of the world right now that are experiencing large-scale conflicts that occupy huge amounts of people's time and cause refugee crises, and people can't grow their own food anymore. They're not on their farm. They're on the road. They're escaping to a refugee center somewhere. So all over the world, you can have global heating and its allied problems like floods and droughts and heat and all the other things can start to interfere with food production. Now, enough said, right? Enough said. There's one more thing that has to be said, though. These large-scale, we grow a lot of food here in the U.S. on a large scale. But these large-scale production environments don't really sell at home. Like oil, these large-scale production efforts go into the global market. They go into the global market. So the people living in the town right next to the corn field don't get the corn. That corn has to be harvested, trucked to some brokerage somewhere 2-3 states away. It gets sold on the open market. The Saudis buy it, the French buy it, the Canadians buy it, and then some U.S. producer making snacks or tortillas or something, they buy it. But they're competing at that point. Your local producer, unless they are literally growing their own corn, harvesting it, and then producing something, unless they are truly a end-to-end local producer, your local producers are in the open market bidding for the harvest. So as the harvest anywhere becomes affected, the harvest in China, the harvest in Ukraine, the harvest in France, the harvest in Brazil, the harvest in the US, the harvest in Canada. As the harvest becomes affected in any places, and right now, because of global heating, which is global, there are many places simultaneously being affected by events. And so here's what's developing. And no one's going to report on this. No one's going to see this coming. It's going to come out of the blue. Everybody's going to storm the Capitol and demand lower prices for butter and Cheetos and everything else. But they'll never understand what happened. And they'll blame the producers and their price gouging and they do all these things. But the problem is that globally, there it is again, that word, globally, food production is going in the toilet because of severe weather caused by global heating. Sometimes it's heat, but other times it's the knock-on effects like the torrential rains or the derechos or the damaging hail. These are all caused by global heating. So the long and the short of it is our food supply, because it's all tangled together unless you are literally buying most of your food at the farmer's market from a literally local producers, like 20 miles away. Unless that's your life, which it isn't, unless that's your life, you are entangled and entwined into this global process of producing, distributing, and using food. And you don't even know that. That's not your fault. No one's ever explained this to you. No one's ever explained where your crude oil comes from. Your crude oil doesn't come from some fracking field in Southern California. Your crude oil comes from the global market for crude oil. And everyone sells into it, and everyone takes out of it. And the price is determined globally. And the price and availability of your food is determined globally. And if there are big screw-ups in China and big screw-ups in Ukraine, then the availability of food begins to be affected, and it begins to collapse. Now, because all this food Machiavellian machinations are taking place on a global scale, then the people who can buy the food are the ones with the most money. And you're competing with people or nations, entire nations, that have the most money. Now, that's pretty good for you living in the U.S. if that's where you are, because the U.S. government will always be able to afford to buy food on the open market. And sometimes it is the government. And sometimes it's U.S. corporations who are also very wealthy, and they can just buy whatever's necessary, and then they pass the cost on to the consumer because everyone's got to eat, right? So provided you live in a country like the U.S. where there's a lot of money at both the government level, the corporate level, the agency level, and then the consumer level, there's a lot of money, then you can just absorb the increase in the price of food, although fuel also, food, because you can just afford it. You won't like the price, but everyone's got to eat, so you'll pay it, right? Just like you would pay the price of gasoline, which is also managed on the global market. If the price of gallon of gasoline went to $6 or $7, you'd pay it. You wouldn't like it. You'd write to your congressperson, these prices, I remember when I was 8 years old. Okay? You'll pay it, though. You will pay it. And when the price of your food goes up, because globally there's a shortage, because globally there's a problem called global heating, you'll pay it. You won't like it, but you'll pay it. The bigger problem is that if we don't have equitable ways of distributing food, then the people who don't have the money, and these may be people in other countries, whole other countries, are going to do without, and they're going to starve. Now, there's a lot of ways that global heating can kill you. Floods, talk to the people in Texas and New Mexico. Floods can definitely kill you. Heat can kill you. So can running out of water. Maybe a little less likely. It's a slower kind of disaster. But running out of food can kill you. And if it doesn't kill you because you live in a wealthy nation with lots of resources and means to accomplish things, then people somewhere else can die. And remember, what I've been claiming on this channel is that we are going into a die-off. And it's going to be colossal. It is going to be a die-off like we haven't seen for 50,000 years or 90,000 years, or going back even further, 450,000 years, where a large percentage of the population in question just dies. And you wouldn't even know it. And this is the challenge. And maybe it doesn't matter because you won't know. These people will die and you won't know. I won't know. There'll be nothing in the news about it. There just won't be. It'll become illegal. I mean, they may just make it impossible. But even if they don't, the corporate media doesn't want to talk about it because it'll make you nervous and scared, and you won't go out and go to Disneyland for the third time this year. Because you'll be depressed, or you'll be concerned. You want to save your money because there's problems in the world. So you withdraw from the consumer economy, and they don't want that. They want you happy and fat and ready to go and ready for an adventure and have all these ideas, and you're going to spend your money, and you don't need to save money because the economy is great, and you won't know. They'll make sure you don't. So when I say, as I have said, and it sounds impossible, but it's true, that out of 1,000 people, one is going to survive global heating. 1 out of 1,000. And you're like, how is that even possible? Won't we do? No, we won't do anything. Because those 999 people don't have to be in your neighborhood. And maybe you always get the food, and maybe you always get the water, and maybe you always have electricity, and maybe there's even subsidies for the cost of electricity and food and water because this is a wealthy country. Maybe they pay you to be able to afford your groceries. I don't know. They'll come up with something. And if they do, you may not even know what's happening in the world. You may never know. And even if there's problems in just, say, the United States of America, but those problems are in parts of the country that are poor, uneducated, don't have good representation in government, corporations aren't interested in them, don't have a good record as consumers, don't buy expensive homes, don't drive expensive cars, don't spend money, no one cares, no one's going to care. If they're not participating in the economy of the U.S., then politicians and corporations will say, well, that was too bad. But on the other hand, we're not going to miss them. And that sounds cruel, and that sounds really bizarre for me to say that, but that's how they think. Well, economically, they didn't really have a role to play. Well, and I guess they were kind of expensive to maintain because they needed SNAP and they needed Medicaid and, they needed Social Security and they needed all the other things. And so, okay, they didn't really participate in the economy and they were parasitic to a degree. That's not my take on it, but that's their take on it, and they'll tell you that. They're somewhat parasitic. We're having to tax ourselves to support these people, and so they just quietly vanish. I'm not going to say it's the goal. There's not a conspiracy. There's not a goal. But the goal, in order for humanity to survive global heating, which is proceeding with absolute, we're on greased skids, folks. We're going there on greased skids. Nothing's going to stop this. This is now a roller coaster, and you're on it, and we're all going to the same place. And, if that's the case, then 999 out of 1,000 people need to volunteer or be discovered or whatever to play their role, which is to vanish. And the way it's going to happen is through lack of food, because that's the first thing that's going to be interrupted. And the wealthy nations and the wealthy people can differentiate themselves by being able to find and afford the food. You see how important that is now? All the food goes on the global market. It's all in warehouses all around the world. It all goes on cargo ships, and it gets shipped to the places that have the money. So the wealthy, the elites, the whatever, the Americans, right? Who are we talking about here? They'll be on that dock when that ship shows up with that food in it. And they'll buy it, whatever the price. And everybody else will make do. And as the food and as the severe weather, all caused by global heating, as the severe weather degrades the production capacity, there's going to be a group over here that gets it. They will get theirs. They'll have to pay extra money for it. Maybe the government will subsidize the price of food. Maybe they'll have to be creative with the food, but they'll get it. They'll get that food. And these other people won't. And that's how 999 out of 1,000 people vanish from the stage. That's how it happens. And we're there. We are there. We have opened the door, and we have walked through the door, and we are just looking around, and what we're seeing is that. The collapse of the global food supply, the restrictions of global food. You won't have any restrictions. You'll be over here with the people who get to have it, but someone's not going to have it. You'll get yours. Maybe it'll be expensive, but you'll be happy to have it. Oh, you'll complain, of course. I'll complain. Everybody will complain, but you'll have it. That's the key. These people won't have it because you got it, and I got it, and the wealthy Americans, and the wealthy Europeans, and the wealthy people got it. They got the stuff. They got it. And that's how this works. And it will be completely invisible. Nobody will see the crop failures. Nobody will see the failures of the infrastructure that stores the crops and processes the food and ships it around the world. Nobody will see that. It'll never be reported. The only reporting you'll see is that there are slightly fewer options now in the supermarket, and the price of everything has gone up 3 times. And everybody complaining, protesting, complaining about the food, although they are buying the food. There you go. It'll be completely invisible. And that's how you lose 999 people out of 1,000. It's completely invisible. Nobody knows. It never happened. Those people never existed. They were never important. They weren't doing anything that anybody cared about. And is that a problem? Is that a moral dilemma? Is that a failure of our morality? Okay. But that's what's going to happen. So that's all I got to say. Got other things to do. Trying to save myself from global heating. You should be too. And be thinking about your food and what you're going to do when later this summer we start to run out, or next year we start to run out, or a year after that, or it gets expensive. And when you see the price go up, tell yourself, yeah, price is going up, but you know what? I'm going to eat it. And you are. You will. And good for you. But remember, there's somebody else whose plate will be empty. Do we care? Can we do anything about it? Is this just the way it is? I don't know. They've destroyed the USAID program. USAID worked with American farmers to ship surplus to other countries to keep people alive. And that's why we have 8 billion people now. Was it a good idea? I don't know. The farmers liked it, just so you know. Farmers liked it a lot. Well, that one's gone. So there's going to be empty plates. Empty pots. People won't have the food. You'll get yours. I'll get mine. Fair enough. We're going to be taken care of. And there'll be empty pots everywhere else. All right. Like I said, that's all I got. Like and subscribe, and I'll be back.